ナマンナナマンナナマンナナマンナナマンナナマンナナマンナナマンナスナマンナスナマンナスナマンナスナマンナスナマンナス。上意とが 心象本願の非力小所欲実法生存知恵無下上量子孫知が心行軽量心思食読中画行精進忍術不敬ナマンナナマンナナマンナナマンナナマンナナマンナナマンナスナマンナスナマンナスナマンナナマンナナマンナスナマンナスナマンナスナマンナスナマンナスナマンナスPlease join me in Gassho. I have collected true words to aid others in their practice for attaining birth in order that the process be made continuous, without end and without interruption, but which those who have been born first guide those who come later, and those who are born later join those who were born before. This is so that the boundless ocean of birth and death be exhausted. 真言を取り集めて王役を助手せしむ。いかんとなれば先に生まれん者は後を導き、後に生まれん人は先をとぐらえ、連続無偶にして願わくは駆使せざらしめんと欲す。無辺の生じ会を月さんがためのゆえなりとナマンダスナマンダスナマンダスナマンダス。Good morning, everyone. There's a lot of been happening in the news recently, so I'd like to talk a little bit about that. Recently, we've seen some very unfortunate things on the news. When we are forced to watch the death of a person, it's very hard to control the emotions that come up. When we are provoked in situations like these, one way to cope is to reflect on what it means to be human and reflect what this life is for. I recently watched a movie that kind of helped put things into perspective. Just out of chance this past week, I watched a movie called
Mirai no Mirai in Japanese, or is it just called maybe Mirai in English? But it's a Japanese animation movie that's on Netflix. And in this movie, we see how the different relationships of the people of our past, our ancestors, help to shape who we are. And this got me to think about what Buddhism says about our relationships that we have with the people around us. If we look at who we are the end result of countless events that happened in history. We are essentially walking history books. The only thing about it is that we don't realize that we are these history books. It might be in our DNA, but we aren't really conscious of it, and we certainly don't walk around talking about events that happened 200 to 300 years ago. We don't realize that we are walking history books, but instead we are encouraged to look at now. We are encouraged to only seek for things that give us instant gratification right now. We are encouraged to forget our histories in favor of the present pleasures. This is made even more so with today's technology. But let's say we take a bird's eye view of the history of where we come from, or where we came from. Literally, let's try to imagine that there is a bird, and since imaginary, let's say the bird is a phoenix, right? And the phoenix is flying over the history of time. Right? Now imagine that phoenix flying over the history of time relevant to who you are and where you come from. So this bird chooses to look at your life. And imagine the phoenix is looking over you right now. Then you go back in time to that moment when you were, let's say, 10 years old and you fell down from your bicycle and you hurt yourself. Then you go further back, and then you're 1 year old to your first birthday. Then when you go further back, and then you go to the time when you were born. And then you go further back to the time when you were in your mother's stomach. Okay, let's fast forward then. Okay, and then fast forward to your parents. And then when your mother was a teenager in grade school. Now your father, who was a teenager. Then their first birthdays. Then to their parents, when their mothers were in grade school. Right? Then to your parents' parents. Then the parents of those parents. And on and on. And we look at the span of history from up above. And what we see from up above, and what we see is the connection after connection, the tie after tie, the bonds after bonds that link countless numbers of people together. Not to mention the various events in history, World War II, World War I, crash of the stock market. Maybe let's point out the Spanish flu because we are very familiar with what a pandemic is now. The Civil War, and if you're Japanese, the Meiji Restoration, right? And on it keeps going. All these events in history that has impacted the lives of our ancestors, the events that impact who we are today, but we don't easily recognize that situation. Buddhism is telling us through the principle of causality, we are connected to all these events in history. Believe it or not, the Egyptian civilization helped to shape who we are today. The dinosaurs helped to shape who we are today. The Silk Road, which hardly gets emphasized in our educational systems in this country, had a huge impact on who we are today, whether we realize that or not. How the Mongols almost took over the world at one point in history. Another point that doesn't get mentioned in school a lot. And I can't imagine the impact they thought they would have left behind for future generations. They probably didn't even realize it. But equally so, we don't really acknowledge that we are connected to those events in history as well. But this is the principle of causality taught in Buddhism. It goes by a lot of names, like, for example, causes and conditions. In Japanese, the word engi, Sanskrit pratitya samuppada, dependent origination, or the Japanese word going, which I will hone in on today. It is a term and teaching we do not emphasize nearly enough in our world today, but it's an undeniable truth. Going. We are connected to our histories and to each other in so many ways that we cannot even begin to fathom. We have no idea who we actually are and where we actually come from because we are bombu. We can only see and only want to see what's immediately in front of us and around us. I mean, really, why care about what happens, to my family 4 or 5 generations down the line? I won't ever meet them, right? They won't ever meet me. They won't weep for me after I'm long gone. They won't even know different things about me, like that I like udon or that I had an interest in music, etc., etc. Right? Nevertheless, however, we are still connected, though, through the principle of going. Despite not really being able to recognize and understand the impact that we leave behind for future generations, when we know this truth, when we come to understand this truth, however, our outlook on life changes. What we do in this life changes. When we understand the truth of going, we now recognize the value of things such as why we need to make efforts now to preserve this earth so that future generations can have a home. We come to understand that people around us have their histories and that we must respect their lives and their backgrounds. We come to understand the value of a human life and to senselessly take it away, as we saw in recent news, is a tragedy not just to a country, but to all of humanity. We come to see that our existence, in all its importance and significance, is nevertheless one link in the chain. It is one diamond in Indra's net. It is one runner in the baton race. It is 1 second in the timeless infinity. We have no idea just how valuable we are, that this life is. We have no idea just how profound and deep this reality goes, myself included, of course. The one constant that is telling us this truth is the Buddha Dharma, what we call Amida Buddha. Amida Buddha's eyes are the phoenix that flies above and sees our histories all at once, right? It is the eye of wisdom that understands the infinite causes and conditions. The love that is passed down from generation to generation, from parent to child, friend to friend, relative to relative, is the expression of great compassion. The bond between family, what is normally referred to as love, are small concrete examples of the great compassion that connects all sentient beings. It is great compassion that creates who you are today. It is great compassion that will help to anchor you in this life of great instability and uncertainty. Why, might you ask? Because great compassion is the underlying driving force that connects all of us. Many people are completely oblivious to this underlying principle. The reason is they have been taught not to care. They have been taught only to care about themselves, only about seeking the pleasures of life here and now, and only to cater to one's ego interests. But Amida Buddha's calling voice of the Nembutsu, Namo Amida Butsu, tells us to take a step back from our ego selves from time to time and see the greater picture. It's kind of like those pictures where you see a big shape of a face, right? But if you look closely at each of the pixels, there's like a small picture in each one of those of depicting different scenes and experiences and those kinds of things, right? So it's kind of like that, right? All of us together are part of the big picture of wisdom and compassion. We are part of the great reality of wisdom and compassion. So what picture are we making then? What does that look like, might you ask? What does wisdom and compassion look like? I mean, those are traits. What does that look like in concrete terms? Well, it looks like this. Amida Buddha, the Gohonzon. That is what wisdom and compassion looks like. When we awaken to this greater picture, we are able to see what we are a part of, and we are able to live to our fullest potential in a truly authentic way. Please join me in Gassho. I have collected true words to aid others in their practice for attaining birth, in order that the process be made continuous, without end and without interruption, but which those who have been born first guide those who come later, and those who are born later join those who were born before. This is so that the boundless ocean of birth and death be exhausted. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu. Namanda Butsu. Namanda Butsu. Namanda Butsu. Namanda Butsu.
Jodo Shinshu Creed 1. Entrusting the vow of the Buddha and reciting the sacred name, I shall proceed through the journey of life with strength and joy. Revering the light of the Buddha, reflecting upon my imperfect self, I shall strive to live a life of gratitude. Following the teachings of the Buddha, discerning the right path, I shall spread the true Dharma. Rejoicing in the compassion of the Buddha, respecting and aiding one another, I shall do my best to work towards the welfare of society. Namandabu, Namandabu, Namandabu.